everyone. Welcome to our Focus Forum today. I'm going to let everybody filter in. We have a very large attendance today. We're very so pleased to have that. Over 165 people have registered, and we're thrilled to have so many joining us. So I'm Rita Riker. To get us started, Rita Riker, president of Focus Greater Syracuse, and welcome all. I'm delighted to have a prestigious panel here today to talk a little bit about Micron and the implications of the Micron investment for the city, the potential implications. We have, as I said, a prestigious panel. Let me just read some bio for you, and then we will get started. So we have Ben Walch, who's the 54th mayor of the city of Syracuse and the first mayor to run as an independent. He was elected to his first term as mayor in 2017 and re-elected to a second four-year term in 2021. In 2019, Ben launched the Syracuse Surge, the city's strategy for inclusive growth in the new economy. Under his leadership, Syracuse became New York's flagship smart city and was selected as one of 5 U.S. cities in 2019 to receive a J.P. Morgan Chase $3 million Advancing Cities grant. In preparation for the massive Interstate 81 viaduct project, Ben created Syracuse Build, a training and workforce development program focused on the construction industry and related careers. The program is successfully helping city residents enter apprenticeships and careers in construction. Walch is a native of Syracuse and grew up on the city's west side. He graduated from Ithaca College, then attended the Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs at Syracuse University, where he earned a master's in public administration. Ben currently resides on the city's west side with his wife, Lindsay, and their 2 daughters. So welcome, Ben.
Thank you.
We have J. Ryan McMahon II, who is Onondaga County's 4th county executive. Ryan started his public service career as a Syracuse City Councilor in 2005. At the age of 25, he was reelected to a second term in 2007. In 2011, Ryan was elected to the Onondaga County Legislature, and in 2012, he was elected chairman of the county legislature by his fellow legislators, becoming the youngest chairman in county history. Ryan was elected county executive in 2018. His focus is on 3 main initiatives: poverty, infrastructure, and economic development. He led the way in securing JMA Wireless on the south side of Syracuse, Amazon in the town of Clay, and most recently, the largest economic development project in New York State history, the Micron project. Ryan grew up in the Strathmore neighborhood in Syracuse and is a graduate of Bishop Ludden High School and Lemoyne College. Thank you for being with us, Ryan.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Great. And then we have Alan Malik, who is a senior fellow with the Center of Community Progress in Washington, D.C. He has worked at the Brookings Institution and the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. He has taught at Rutgers University and Stockton State University, lectured at universities in the United States, Europe, Japan, China, and Israel. He has held several public sector positions, including Director of Housing and Economic Development for the City of Trenton, New Jersey. Alan has authored more than a dozen books on cities and urban development. His latest book, written with Todd Swanstrom, is America's Changing Neighborhoods, The Meaning of Place in the 21st Century. It explores the value of neighborhoods in today's cities and the many challenges they face. Other recent works include Smaller Cities in a Shrinking World, Learning to Live Without Growth, and The Divided City, Poverty and Prosperity in Urban America. His 2000 book, Bringing Buildings Back from Vacant Properties to Community Assets, has become a resource for planners, lawyers, public officials, and community leaders across the country, dealing with property and revitalization issues. Alan is also an accomplished pianist and author of 2 well-received books of 19th century Italian opera. He holds a BA degree from Yale College and has lived for the past 40 years in Roosevelt, New Jersey. Welcome, Alan. I am now going to turn this over to Focus Board member Mike Stanton, who will act as moderator for today's session.
Thanks, Rita. Thanks, Rita. Welcome, everyone.
It's unlikely that any of you attending today are unaware of Micron's planned investment in Central New York, but just in case, Micron Technologies, with headquarters in Idaho, has announced plans to spend up to $100 billion over the next 20 years to build 4 huge chip-making complexes in Clay, New York. The plants are expected to eventually have up to 9,000 employees. Construction was initially set to begin this year, but it's now been delayed until late 2025. There is some speculation that the Trump administration may alter the terms of the CHIP Act that supports the Micron investment, but the consensus of experts seems to be that the act will remain as it is. For the purposes of our discussion today, we'll assume that the Micron project is going ahead as expected. There are several issues regarding Micron that we won't address today. For instance, environmental impact. There have been and will be other public meetings where issues like this will be discussed. Our focus today will be the City of Syracuse. How will the Micron project impact the city? And how can Syracuse see the greatest benefit from the project? So here we have the challenge. At this year's Democratic National Convention, Governor Kathy Hochul told the audience that Micron's $100 billion chip factory in Clay will be the largest private investment in American history. Meanwhile, 12 miles away, the city of Syracuse has the 3rd highest poverty rate in the nation and the highest child poverty among cities with populations over 100,000. Can we go to the next slide, please? Here are the topics we'll address today as we get into this issue. Workforce, what part of the workforce could come from Syracuse? Procurement, where will the necessities at the plant be procured from? Housing, will employees of Micron live in the city? And then opportunities for the city beyond Micron. So next slide, please. Here is our first topic, workforce. Hiring agreements. Will there be hiring agreements for skilled construction jobs with eventual union membership? What about permanent Micron jobs? And will there be a workforce training pipeline for all jobs covered under the hiring agreement? Can we start? Could Alan, you start us out with your thoughts on this?
Okay, I'll be happy to, and I'm glad to be here back virtually, if not in person, in Syracuse. Excuse me. First, Governor Hochul may have been a little off in terms of being perhaps the greatest investment in American history, but $100 billion is still, even today, an awful lot of money. And this is going to have a significant impact, I think, on Syracuse. And I think the biggest issue, though, for the city of Syracuse is the question of how much of the jobs will actually come to Syracuse residents. And that's where the 2 issues of hiring agreements and workforce are absolutely critical. Because, left to their own devices, Micron will basically hire from not just a regional, but even a national pool of people. People will flock to the region to try to capture those jobs. And this is particularly true in terms of the construction jobs, because the nature of the construction union system is that they will look for people who may not have opportunities in wherever they are, be it West Virginia, Mississippi, wherever, to come here temporarily to fill those jobs. So creating the agreements that will require local hiring, at least a significant percentage of both the construction jobs, which means working not just with Micron, but working with the construction trades unions, is a critical piece of the picture. And the second piece, which of course, I think as many people know, is already being actively pursued within the city and the region, is developing the workforce pipeline. The jobs that are going to be involved are, for the great majority, high-skilled jobs. They are not just walk in off the street jobs. So the pipeline has to be well developed, and one other point, which is sometimes overlooked in the workforce development field, they have to focus not just on the technical skills that the people need to be able to get and hold those jobs, but especially if you want to reach people who are not already part of the stable workforce, you need to look at psychological issues, legal disabilities like child support judgments, and other things that could interfere with their ability to get the jobs or hold the jobs, even if they have the skills that are needed. So I think all of those pieces have to be focused on and pulled together to make this really benefit the city of Syracuse.
Ben and Ryan, please jump in as you see fit.
Yeah, well, for one of the questions related to specifically the construction workforce, before we even announced the deal, we negotiated a project labor agreement. That was a contingency put on by the CEO of Micron before an announcement, because certainly in a negotiation, you're not going to announce a deal and then have a project labor agreement after the announcement, because then the agreement would be negotiations would have been slanted towards the union side of the equation. But the reality is there's already a PLA. It's done. It's been done for years. To I think everyone's point, in New York right now, for the first fab construction, which will start in next year, which is weeks away, and it only starts at the end of next year because, quite frankly, we have an endangered bat that's on the site, so we can't cut down trees literally for 6 months. So that's why it's in the back end of next year, not because Micron doesn't want to cut down trees faster. Is we won't be able to hire enough, local plumbers and local construction workers and carpenters and electricians. And then we'll go to the rest of the New York State, and we still won't even be able to hire enough because there's other things going on. So then you go to the Northeast, and we still won't even be able to hire enough. So you will have skill sets from areas that are familiar with building semiconductor fabs. Likely see construction teams that have worked on the TSMC fab in Phoenix coming here, and others. But those deals are there. So the challenge is for Fab 1, we know all of our local available labor will be working statewide and in the Northeast, but we need to develop, the talent for Fab 2 and Fab 3 and 4 eventually. And hopefully most of that talent will be developed locally. In addition to that, part of what we negotiated as well is trying to figure out ways to Alan's point, where you do have kind of local hiring, requirements, but it's hard. It's hard when you have low unemployment to put those types of issues on there. But what there is there's an intentionality with the company and with the everybody locally, that the only way this will work is if we really activate the underserved communities to get engaged. Those are traditionally communities of color, traditionally rural communities, and quite frankly, underemployed individuals who happen to be a lot of single moms who are working 20 hours a week, 25 hours a week. How do we get them to full employment? And that comes, with barriers to employment, right? Childcare, transportation. So those are things that we're all looking at. And the company's been a great ally. There's a community benefit agreement, essentially, where not in the traditional sense that some people want to see, but they've invested over $250 million into our community, and we'll be taking those resources and investing. They've already invested in the most. They've invested in the STEAM school. They're doing chip camps all over the community with all of our different schools. They co-invested with the county in building the clean room lab for technicians at OCC. So these are all things that they're already doing. We know to make this work, we have to get into these underrepresented communities historically. And, at the same time, we will welcome in people from outside the area. And they'll call Onondaga County and City of Syracuse, some of them, home.
So I think Alan and the county executive covered a lot of the bases. Just want to talk specifically about a couple programs and initiatives. So as Rita mentioned earlier, the Syracuse Surge Initiative and Syracuse Build program were launched back in 2019. That was before we knew of the Micron opportunity, but we did know at that time that we needed to be more competitive in the new economy, whether it was semiconducting or AI or Internet of Things. And so we collectively began to make investments in those areas, and those investments are already bearing fruit. So on the construction side, through Syracuse Build, one of the first programs that came out of it was our Pathways to Apprenticeship program. We have had multiple cohorts of that program now. And actually just yesterday, we had a meeting on 81 and heard from an individual who participated in the first Pathways to Apprenticeship cohort. That's a 11 or 12-week program where participants receive a stipend to participate. The curriculum is developed and led by the trade unions. And essentially, when those graduates come out of that program, they are offered an apprenticeship in the trade of their choice. So we've had over 100 participants in the Pathways program. More than 60 are currently in apprenticeships. The individual we heard from yesterday was working on the 81 project, who graduated in the first cohort and is in his fourth year apprenticeship with the Carpenters Union. So it's working. I think what we acknowledged when the Micron opportunity presented itself is that all of these programs, we really had to accelerate and scale. So we've increased the number of participants per cohort in Pathways to Apprenticeship. We have Syracuse Surge programming for the more technical aspects of the work that's going to be required at STEAM at Micron. And speaking of STEAM, we also back years ago made a conscious decision to make a regional STEAM high school one of our biggest economic development priorities. The county is a significant partner in that as well. They will have a semiconducting career and technical education program when they open up next year. We also have a semiconducting P-Tech program already existing at Corcoran High School in partnership with OCC. We have nearly 30 high school kids in that program today. So again, a lot of the seeds were planted years ago and are already bearing fruit. Again, our challenge is to scale and accelerate it. And I think it's worth noting that all of those programs have an intentional focus on those historically marginalized communities that the county executive talked about. So we can, in fact, maximize the local impact of this opportunity.
Great. Can we move to the next topic? Could we see the next slide, please? So workforce, and then the next one is procurement. There we go. So the question is what the basic things that the plant will need: local food service, maintenance, janitorial, supplies like paper towels, hand soap, etc. Will those be sourced locally? Could they be sourced from the city?
They will be sourced with local companies. We did put in requirements for operation spend. We really would like the company to focus in on working with some of our women and minority and veteran-owned businesses in simple things like this, right, where we know we can provide it. Certainly, part of what we're doing right now is we're actively engaging companies from around the world to locate here with Micron and develop the supply chain for more complicated spend that, quite frankly, we don't have here. So, but you're going to see a lot of local companies doing business with Micron. It just makes sense, in addition to being the right thing to do. So that whether they're in the city of Syracuse or not, I don't know. There'll certainly be competition from companies, but local companies will be doing business with them.
Yeah, I would just add that a lot of those relationships are already beginning to be developed, and local businesses are already identifying opportunities to participate in the procurement process. Also, somewhat separate but related, I think it's also critical that in addition to our existing businesses, we continue to create an environment where new businesses can emerge and take advantage of the opportunities. We have our Surge Accelerator program, which is specifically focused on BIPOC entrepreneurs, where we are providing specialized support to scale up those companies. Of course, we have our Tech Garden, operated by Center State CEO, undergoing an expansion right now to create more space for tech companies to grow. So, it is in addition to taking advantage of existing businesses and opportunities, it's about growing the ecosystem, and we're focused on that as well.
Yeah. I'd like just to add briefly, I think we're looking at sort of two separate categories here, support. And I think there's no question that when it comes to the basic necessities, whether it's, the paper towels and the janitorial services, so forth, those are, if at all possible, going to be sourced locally, because it's clearly in Micron's interest to take advantage of local resources for that. I think the big question mark, and I think this is going to evolve slowly, is the extent to which the Syracuse area can become a source of part of the supply chain for the actual chip manufacturing themselves. That's going to be tough, because clearly Micron has been in this business in different places for a long time, and they have established supply chains out there all over, not just the United States, but the world. And so finding the niche within those supply chains to build a local supply chain is going to be difficult. But it's important to start the process, recognize it's not going to happen quickly. It's going to be a very gradual process that hopefully will unfold as Micron goes from Fab 1 to Fab 2 and so forth over the years, but hopefully over time will evolve. And I think it's important that this is the point where the city and the county have to start laying the groundwork for that, but that's going to be harder.
Just one more point I wanted to add to Alan's point about the existing relationships. There's a reason why the county executive and I flew across the world to Taiwan earlier this year. That's where a lot of those partnerships exist. We recently hosted a delegation from Japan. So, those are also opportunities to draw in additional business and investment, and to create to try to leverage those opportunities similar to the way that we're trying to leverage Micron. So just wanted to note that as well.
Yeah,
Not a junket.
No junkets there, Alan. But I would just to touch on that too. Just like we developed, the White Pine Business Park, the North America's newest mega site. It takes investment, right? So one of the things that, especially if you look at Micron supply chain, it's mostly in Asia. The tooling companies are the tooling companies, but, your material supply companies and your gas and chemical companies, that's where they manufacture most of their products. So no company from Taiwan or Japan or Korea is going to want to go and negotiate with a real estate agent trying to get top dollar for their land, right? So their model in their countries is that you create business parks, and science and technology parks is what they call them, and they work with the government on that. So certainly we're going to continue to invest in supply chain sites. We have the premier site across the street from the White Pine Business Park, but needless to say, if there's any county legislators on this chat, I will be asking the legislature for more resources in short order as we've locked up more land to continue to develop the supply chain.
Yeah.
Okay, can we,
sorry.
Go ahead, Alan, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's a very important point. The county and the state, and hopefully the federal government under the new administration, have got to make some major investments to build that long-term return. This is a upfront investment, long-term 10, 20-year return. But if it's successful, it has a huge impact on the region.
Okay, can we go to the next topic, please? Can you bring up the next slide? And that is housing, people living in the city and benefiting from Micron. In 1950, the Syracuse population was 220,000. Today it is 145,000. So the city has room to grow. On the other hand, University Hill in the center of the city now has the county's highest concentration of good paying jobs, but only 1 out of 5 University Hill employees lives in the city. Question is, how do we attract those working 12 miles away near the new plant to live in the city?
So I'll take a crack at that one first. I know the county executive has a lot of thoughts about that too. I think that the statistic about University Hill reflects what this community has done for the past, half century, which is, a lot of sprawl without growth, and so the population has been, spread out over a wider expanse. I think we've learned from that. I think that you can see that evidently in the county's new plan Onondaga, which really, and again, I don't mean to take away from the county executive's points, but really focuses development in existing centers, whether it be the city center or villages and town centers. But again, I think there's alignment between the city and the county in terms of where we want to direct that growth. And of course, on behalf of the city, we want to maximize the opportunity here in the city. I think we do have some inherent advantages. I tell the story about as we were wooing Micron. We didn't bring them out to certain places all over the region. We brought them downtown and showed them all of the cultural amenities that we had to offer here, which are for the region, not just for the city. So I think, from a talent attraction and retention standpoint, having a vibrant city and urban center is valuable. I also think that we have been much more inclined to invite additional housing development. Certain communities, and I know the county executive is working hard on that, but some of our suburban communities have not been welcoming to new housing investments, and we are being aggressive. I made a housing promise last year, my State of the City, or earlier this year, to bring in another 2,500 new units of housing over the remainder of my administration, which ends at the end of next year. We are investing in affordable housing and mixed income housing, trying to hit different income levels. We have our new housing strategy, which is focusing on our middle neighborhoods that haven't seen the same amount of private market-driven investment that our more stable neighborhoods have had, and also not as much investment as some of our lowest income neighborhoods have seen. If we can really strengthen those middle neighborhoods, the Tip Hills, the Eastwoods, and that's what our housing strategy is about, we think we can be really competitive in attracting working class people to those neighborhoods and really stabilize them. So we're being aggressive. We're trying to invest in new housing, more housing, stabilizing our existing housing stock, and also investing in additional cultural entertainment amenities that will draw people. But the reality is there's going to be opportunities for multiple communities throughout the region. And again, I think through the county's leadership, they have the right plan to direct those investments in areas where there's existing infrastructure, as is the case with Syracuse.
Yeah, the mayor did a very good job there talking about everything in this issue. Look, the reality is for the first time in generations, this community has, a regional roadmap for how we can grow. And in addition to that, the city did a housing study, which is a great document. We have the first countywide housing study in the history of the county, as well for the rest of the suburban communities, but the city study with the same vendor, so it's part of our county study. I think the mayor hit on a couple really like basic points here. The subject, the topic broadly, how can the city benefit the most from Micron? The reality is that resources. That's the reality. The sales tax formula that we have drives revenue to the city. Recognizing the regional importance of the centers that we've referenced here. More people, more activity, higher wages are all going to drive more revenue through that. And for the housing study in the housing document to be implemented the way the city wants it, they're going to need resources. They're going to need to be able to pay for public safety. Without public safety, you can't have good neighborhoods. It's just a hard stop right there. In addition to that, the mayor referenced what are facts is that low income neighborhoods get more housing investment. It's easier to find resources than working class and middle income neighborhoods. And so with more resources, implementing the plan can be there as well. I do think I'm super bullish on the Inner Harbor. I think that it's going to explode with activity. With everything we're doing to invest in the lake, in connectivities, and with the aquarium going there, and some other things that we can't highlight right now, but I can assure you, like that neighborhood's going to blow up. It's going to be fantastic, and that's going to drive more revenue. It's going to drive more young people into that neighborhood, which will help implement the long-term housing plan that the city needs. So I think overall, we in the county have invested, I think we have about $30 million of cash that we've invested for incentives to develop housing. If you look at where we are spending that money, most of it is in the city right now. It's about 70% of it is in the city to help get projects going. I have new people reaching out to us daily with looking to develop old buildings, whether they're in the city or villages. So I think overall, the housing is going to come. There's going to be new housing. There's going to be more diverse housing throughout the region. But the key way that we'll be able to support housing is the overall economics, right? The overall wealth generation in the community that will help the city be able to actually implement their plan to strengthen some of these working class and middle income neighborhoods.
Alan, you're muted.
I think, yeah, I think this is an area of great opportunity, but really major challenges, especially for the city of Syracuse. I mean, as the mayor pointed out, the pattern of people living in the city, living in the suburbs and commuting to the city, as well as the other way around, people living in the city and commuting to shopping centers and nursing homes and so forth in the suburbs for jobs, is something that's a national pattern. It's not unique to Syracuse and Onondaga County. So it's going to take work to try to change that. And another issue that's important, but may represent an opportunity for Syracuse in a way, is the fact that in New York State, of course, zoning development regulations are still controlled at the municipal level. So if the towns don't want to buy in to changing the zoning, to providing the kind of compact development, and that they really, in my opinion, and I think in the county executive's opinion, that should be happening, it's not going to happen, which is unfortunate at one level, but could be an opportunity for Syracuse to create additional housing. I think within Syracuse, I think the county executive is absolutely right. The Inner Harbor, and I would add to that the development that's going to result from the removal of I-81, represent two major opportunities to create significant new housing that's going to be attractive to people of all income levels and so forth. I think it's going to be most attractive to, I think, young people, single people, couples, people without children, because they, are going to be more demanding in terms of what they're going to be looking for, and more concerned about issues of safety in schools, which are going to take time to fix. So I think that's the big opportunity. I think some of the neighborhoods, and I think there it's important to identify neighborhoods that have some real assets and really focus on them as sort of targets, if you will, for trying to draw the people coming through Micron back into the city. And I think, as the county executive, the mayor pointed out, this takes resources. When you're trying to influence a market and influence the choices of people who will be making enough money so they can basically live almost anywhere in the county from a purely economic standpoint, you have to figure out how to use resources to tilt the playing field in the other direction. That's both in terms of the affordability of the housing, and especially in terms of increasing the amenity level and the desirability of what it means to live in the city of Syracuse, and making sure the housing is in fact of the highest quality, both architecturally and otherwise, so that it's going to be a long-term asset for the city. So I think it can be done, but it is going to be very difficult. And as we talked about with respect to the supply chain, requires significant short-term investment in order to create long-term return for the city and county.
One of the questions we've gotten from our attendees is transportation. Will it be possible to live in the city, work at Micron, and not have a car?
Yeah. That's quite frankly, whenever you go through a selection process with any economic development deal, this is part of the box you need to check, or else you don't, move forward. So same thing with Amazon. So when you think of it, you're going to need, Central's already committed to 3 shifts of transportation. We're going to have to do better than that, though, quite frankly. Bus rapid transit is happening with the city in 2026. I think we're going to need an employer rapid transit, system focusing in on our major employers, which are out in the suburbs. And so that's something that we're pushing our teams to really think about, similar to like a BRT route, that way. Also, we need to be aspirational related to long-term transportation goals. If we do our job well, and the community grows and the region grows, and we do become the hub for memory technology manufacturing in North America, the idea about light rail and things of this nature, aren't out of the question. And so I think overall, related to transportation, this is an area that as we make more and more progress in executing on this, and my team works on executing on this every day, from the site to the infrastructure to everything else. I think this will be highlighted, but the short answer is yes. Central will be providing at minimum 3 shifts of transportation to the site from the city.
County executive really covered the public transportation front, so I won't repeat that. But I do want to mention, going back to some barriers, included in all of our workforce development programs now, we have supports in place to assist individuals with getting access to vehicles, whether it's working out license issues with their license with the DMV, tickets, and also being able to purchase new vehicles or access vehicles. So understanding that we are still a very car-dominated community, that needs to be part of the approach, and it is. But to the county executive's point, as we grow, we need to evolve and elevate our level of transportation systems, and the good news is we're on track to do that.
I don't really have anything to add. Just I think that's an important point. This is going to be an evolving process, and frankly, it may seem a little odd to be providing people with individual vehicles when you're at the same time talking about public transit. But I think that actually makes a whole lot of sense, because you've got to deal with where they're at immediately and then build the system over time.
Okay, Alicia, can we move to our next topic? The next slide, please. So the final issue is opportunities for the city beyond Micron. What should the city be thinking of beyond the Micron project?
So I'll start with that one. I think that my point that I started with, that the seeds that we planted years ago, and even a decade ago, are still growing and bearing fruit. I felt, and of course I'm an optimist, but before Micron, we were, I think, by most metrics, we were headed in a more positive direction. We were the last census, we gained population for the first time in 70 years. When you look at some of the other industry sectors that are growing. You know, we've invested a lot in the uncrewed aerial system industry, or drones, and we're seeing significant investment from drone-related companies. A lot of the other high-tech manufacturing that we're seeing, whether it's JMA or TTM, you know, as I said, it's really about building an ecosystem to be competitive in the new economy, and we're doing that. And with that expansion of the Tech Garden, we're hopefully, you know, seeding the future Microns and TTMs and JMAs of the world. I think, you know, like a lot of older industrial cities, I think all of our communities, our country, have realized that, you know, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, and you have to diversify your economy. So I think that we need to leverage this opportunity that we have, of course, to maximize the impact of Micron, but to you know, along with the investment and attention that comes with that opportunity, use it to invest and to plant seeds for future opportunity well beyond that. So, but again, this gives us an opportunity to really accelerate and scale everything that we're doing in a way that, you know, most communities never have.
Yeah, I would agree with the mayor. I mean, look, at the reality is Micron's the unicorn project. I think what the governor was trying to talk about, Alan, was the fact that it's the largest private sector investment in the history of the United States in one location. And that's true. So the mayor is right. If you take Micron aside, you know, we just won a $125 million expansion at TTM. We beat South Carolina. You know, the Blue Forest just finished their second expansion in cryogenics technology, leader there. You look at the fact that we have the largest robotics logistics facility in the country with Amazon. You look at what JMA Wireless did, large employer in Clay, going in and solidifying and growing downtown Syracuse with technology that they have a clear industry lead on. They could end up being our largest employer at some point in this community down the road. So you look at all these different wins that are happening, you know, the billion-dollar company density out of the Tech Garden. These are all things that are happening. And the fundamentals for why Micron chose us, look, Micron did not choose Onondaga County and or New York State because of Chips and Science Act or green chips legislation. Those were things that happened after the fact that were necessary to close the deal to make that investment here. They chose us because of the infrastructure that we had at the White Pine Business Park and their belief that they could develop, recruit, and retain a workforce in Central New York. And those fundamentals are still there for other companies. And they're there for other companies to continue to grow, like Saab and SRC and Lockheed Martin and others. So we have water. We have infrastructure, we have wastewater. Because of Micron, we are going to have more of that because we're going to spend $2 billion growing out that infrastructure. The other thing that I think is a real opportunity because of the fact that everybody's interested how we won this deal, you know, everybody's interested. How they do it, right? Internationally, nationally, tourism will be an opportunity here, where we can showcase our community and all of the natural resources and advantages that we have compared to the rest of the world. So I think that's going to really be helpful. The hospitality industry, I think, will grow. We need to continue to invest in arts and culture and entertainment infrastructure to meet those moments. But there's a lot of momentum. Before Micron is just the anchor now that's going to be supercharging a lot of it. But there's going to be lots of wins.
So, Alan, I think you have the last word here.
Well, thank you. I think that's the key thing. Micron is an amazing opportunity for Syracuse and Onondaga County, but it's not the be all and end all. And I think you all realize that. And the trick is to just make the absolute most of Micron for the county and the city, and simultaneously focus on continuing to do everything that you're doing or would have done if Micron had never appeared on the scene, and just keep ratcheting it up. And I would say, in addition to what's happening in terms of economic development and the new tech sectors and so forth, is to continue to focus on, you know, building up the strength of Syracuse, taking advantage to the hilt of the I-81 redevelopment and the Inner Harbor and the middle neighborhood strategy, and just keep moving on all fronts, because there's never a magic bullet. No matter how big Micron or anything else is, neither it nor anything else is ever a magic bullet for a region. Got to keep focusing on everything, and keep also focusing on how to increase the equity within the region, reduce the inequalities between Syracuse and a lot of the suburban towns, and build up the opportunities for the people who live in the most disadvantaged communities. And if you can do all of those simultaneously, and it sounds like you are, then I think the future for Syracuse and the county should be a bright one. And Micron becomes, as you put it, the anchor, but not the whole ship.
Okay, we have one question, one time, I think for one question at least from the audience. P. Harvey asks, how do we ensure that our more needy citizens will benefit from Micron, especially when higher prices for nearly everything will grow, if not skyrocket?
I don't think higher prices for everything will grow, if not skyrocket. I think that's one half of the question. The other one is, remember, if we're talking about food and basic necessities of life, these are part of a national scene. They're not going to change dramatically because of Micron or anything else. Now, one issue is housing. Housing prices could grow, and that's where the city and the county have to be careful to think about, make sure that, affordability is preserved. But ironically, to some extent, you want housing prices to grow in certain areas, because currently an awful lot of the housing stock, especially in the Syracuse, is priced too low to get home buyers to really want to buy it, to get people to be willing to make the kind of investments that old houses really need. So you want to find the balance between housing cost increases and maintaining affordability. And that's a delicate process, but I think it can be done. But I think the other issue about ensuring that people benefit goes back to where we started, making sure that the workforce systems, that the procurement systems, and the hiring agreements and so forth are all focused on maximizing opportunities for people in disadvantaged communities and lower income people who are currently not really benefiting from the workforce. That's the critical issue.
Yeah, I would agree with Alan that the area we can have the most impact on affordability is housing. We need more inventory. We've had drastic assessment increases and property value increases. Some of it's speculative, right, for the good things happening, but most of it is because there's not enough houses, right? And so the same thing in the rental market as well. So the key to stabilize the rental market, and certainly the single family purchase market, multifamily purchase market, is through more inventory. That's why we're incentivizing, we changed our uniform tax exempt policy to give pilots for housing. That's why we are literally paying cash for housing. We're literally helping infrastructure costs for housing in a way that county government never has before, because we don't control zoning, we don't control codes, but it's a regional challenge now, so we've gotten in the game. I would agree with Alan too. The rest of this is about workforce. Getting into neighborhoods and getting into underserved populations historically, and getting them the training they need for the job. I say it everywhere I go. Poverty is a symptom of a lack of economic opportunity, and for the first time since I've been in office, and Rita highlighted it, I've been in office a while. We have the economic opportunity now. Now we got to connect the people who need the opportunity for the job. And so we've made historic investments in early childhood. We've made historic investments in the countywide STEAM school. We've made investments in the tech garden. We've made investments at OCC. The county's made a huge investment with Syracuse University related to the research and development side of things on the back end. So I think overall, all of these are workforce infrastructure investments that should pay dividends for residents in the short and long term.
Okay, I think it's getting time to wrap up. I'm going to turn it back over to Rita to close out for us.
Yes, well, lots of opportunities, lots of challenges, but I really love the optimism that we're seeing here today. So thank you, Alan. Thank you, County Exec McMahon, and thank you, Mayor Walch, for being here today to share all of this information with you. And of course, thank you, Mike, for your moderation. Appreciate it. And in the background, Alicia, our staff person, Alicia, who's been handling the PowerPoints. I appreciate that. This will, in the next few days, this will be placed on our website. So if you know of anybody else who wants to learn a little bit more about how the city might benefit from the Micron investment, or if you need, we went through a lot of information today. If you need to go check it out again, it'll be there up on our website, focussyracuse.org. Again, thank you all, and have a wonderful weekend.